So this is a really strong one, very energetic, really punchy. I like the kick and the snare a lot. It's in the thrash beat and blast beat that I noticed that I think the close mics on the hi-hat and the ride could come up and be treated a little bit differently. I mean, I can hear there's a hi-hat there, but it's really just a little shimmery sound over there rather than something which feels energetic. And then similarly with the ride, I guess. I can hear the top end of the attack of it, but I don't get the sense of it being a big clangy ride. That was the mega bell that we ended up using on this, so that is a ride that has lots of body and clang to it, so it would be cool to hear that in the mix, and I've got a feeling that Luke could just bring up the close mics and that would do quite a lot.
Let me just quickly interrupt you. No, I'm not Nolly, but I promise he'll be back in just a few seconds. I'm here to tell you what we're gonna do in this video, because Adam Nolly Getgood, he has checked out all your drum mixes and he's gonna review them today. How cool is that? I've told him to be as honest as possible, so you'll get his honest opinion, all right? He will tell you what's good, what's bad, and what can be improved. I think this is gonna be very interesting because he's gonna show and pinpoint some of the typical problems that people have when they mix drums. In case you also want to mix the drum tracks that Nolly recorded, check out the link below to the infamous masterclass, the Nolly Drum Experience. It's a, I think, 3.5 or 4 hour long course where Nolly shows you everything he knows about recording and mixing drums, and it includes the multi-tracks. Anyway, now it's time to pass it over to Nolly again. Let's find out how good your drum mixes are. Here we go.
Hello everyone. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that's made the Nolly Drum Experience Masterclass a success. It seems to have gone down really well. People have enjoyed it and found that they've been getting stuff out of it, which is really brilliant. And yeah, no, just thank you very much. It was really fun to do. I enjoyed doing it with Christian. It's so nice. It's so delightful to know that it's been helping people on their drum recording journey. So that's awesome. Christian has sent me a bunch of drum mixes done with the raws from the course. And I have to say the general standard has been super high, which is excellent. He asked me to pick a few to go through and kind of do a little bit of a critique or pick out things I liked or things that I thought maybe could be done a little bit differently. There were a lot of ones to look at, and I ended up picking the ones that just immediately had something to talk about, whether it was just that, like, off the bat sounds really good, or that there's an obvious thing that could be fixed that would kind of improve things a lot. So let's just dig straight in. Let's listen to Alistair's first. So I'm going to mute the backing track now and see what we hear hearing the drums and solo. So right off the bat, the thing which I'm noticing is it's quite a pumpy drum mix. So that kick drum is ducking things a lot, especially the reverb tail off the snare. As I say, this was a big room, so there's a huge amount of natural reverb to work with. And while I didn't really notice it in the mix, it sounded energetic and compressed, but I didn't necessarily notice quite how kind of almost gated the room sound felt around the kick drum. I wonder if maybe it's a little bit too much. Some credit. I think the kit's sounding really good. The kick drum itself sounds great, really squishy, great attack to it. Good cymbal clarity. It sounds like he's using a lot of the ride close mic there, and he's panned it very far off to the right, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong, but for me, I tend to, when I'm dealing with a mono signal like a cymbal close mic, I don't tend to pan it too extremely just because it becomes evident that it's just only in one speaker. It's not kind of like a natural stereo image. So I might say it could be good to just pull that in a little bit. I'm nitpicking though. I might reduce the room sound a little bit, but it's tough. I mean, the room sounds really good. You tend to want to use it when that's the case. But you can hear, like there, especially like the cymbals sound very roomy. Again, nitpicking. I'd just say it would be interesting to see what could be done, kind of refining the room sound a little bit. Nice big sounding toms, that's cool. Plenty of body on there. So yeah, good work, Alistair. Let's check out Max Porter's here. Yes, this is the one. When I imported this, it was actually a little bit behind the others. It was like this. And what I'm seeing is pre-ringing of the low frequencies. And I think then there's latency being introduced to the whole mix. And I suspect this is because Max is using some kind of linear phase EQ to do something in the low end. And that is a recipe for pre-ringing low frequencies, which is not really a good thing on anything percussive. So you can actually, if you listen, hear this kind of like slight inrush of low end before every kick, which is a bit distracting. Let's see if you can hear what I mean about this kind of like slightly backwards kick low end. It's actually making the kick drum sound kind of, it feels almost a little bit out of phase in that like the attack feels like it's getting eaten up, like swallowed up a little bit. And I'm guessing that's because the frequency range is getting, it's no longer time aligned on the kick drum. In general, I'd just say stay away from linear phase EQ. There's very few times where it's really necessary. I basically never use linear phase EQ because of these kinds of issues. So Max, be careful with that. But other than that, the snare drum sounding really good, nice and attacky. Not really perceiving bleed issues, which is good. I mean, I can hear the china coming through the snare gate in the intro a bit, but the toms seem to be quite well dealt with. I would say the snare could use a little bit more beef, like maybe get a low shelf at 150-ish and boost it up just to give it a bit more like powerful low end on the hit. And I feel like the toms, I don't really have much complaint about with the toms there. Maybe they could just be a bit bigger, and again, maybe the room could be a bit more exciting, or the overheads could give a bit more excitement to them there. I'd say, again, linear phase thing, if that is what it is. If I'm wrong about that, that'd be quite funny. But that would be the main thing I'd watch out for. Everything else seems to be coming along really well there. This seems like a strong mix to me. Good balance, cymbals nice and up front. I can hear everything. It feels a little bit uncompressed in a way which makes me wonder if Gabriel mixed this into a similar kind of bus compression setting that I use, like a fast attack to clamp down the snare, but then he bypassed that before sending it. Just sitting on top a little bit and sounding a little bit stiff. If I actually pull up a bus compressor with my kind of setting, to me, it sounds better with that on. There's just like a kind of upfrontness and kind of rigidity to the snare. But yeah, sounding really good. Maybe a little bit more beef on the snare drum would be nice to hear, like a little bit more low frequency power in there. But it's sounding really good. Really good representation of the ride cymbal. I think that's got plenty of clang to it. Ooh, there's some interesting bleed coming through in that fill on probably the snare drum. Let's just take another listen. Yeah, okay, so there's actually multiple issues going on here. So there's some softer snare hits you can actually just visually see in the other mixes. There's like 2 snare hits there that are just not present in Gabriel. So those have been, I think, gated out. And then on the little effect cymbal bits, or the snare hits between the effect cymbals, you can hear like little pss, 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 kind of bleed coming through in the snare top. So I feel like there's something that could be refined about the snare gating. I think it's quite an aggressive gate on this, like it's chopping really far off, whether down to 0 or like down to kind of minus 30 dB plus. I would suggest that doing less reduction with the gate. I mean, I'm typically aiming for about 10 to 12 reduction, and that tends to mean that even when stuff is under threshold a little bit, like the softer snare hits, you still hear them rather than them just disappearing completely. And then it's less of a contrast between the gate being open and closed, or expander, I guess, technically. That means that, yeah, you don't really notice this kind of choppy sounding bleed coming in on fills. So let's check out the toms. Kind of missing a little bit of energy there. I wonder if the room could be a little bit more exciting in general, or just during that section. But yeah, no, fair play. I think that's sounding really good. Alright, so this is a really strong one. Very energetic, really punchy. I like the kick and the snare a lot. I feel like the room, it's got some energy to it. It's not too kind of weighed down with low frequencies. I'm wondering if I'm hearing a little bit of snare sample in there. No, the kind of slightly weaker hits feel coherent tonally with the harder ones. I've got a feeling there's no sample on there. There's a bit of bleed coming through on that floor tom, maybe a little bit too much for my liking. Actually, it's quite a lot. The top end of the cymbal is almost louder than the top end of the tom. Yeah, maybe a little bit much. It's in the thrash beat and blast beat that I noticed that I think the close mics on the hi-hat and the ride could come up and be treated a little bit differently, because I'm just losing the cymbals quite a lot during that section, like especially with the backing track in place. I mean, I can hear there's a hi-hat there, but it's really just a little shimmery sound over there rather than something which feels energetic. And then similarly with the ride, I guess. I can hear the top end of the attack of it, but I don't get the sense of it being a big clangy ride. You know, like that was the mega bell that we ended up using on this. So that is a ride that has lots of body and clang to it. So it would be cool to hear that in the mix. And I've got a feeling that Luke could just bring up the close mics, and that would do quite a lot. The splash is coming through nicely. You could maybe have a tiny bit more close mic on the splash, but in general, like, that actually sounds really well integrated with the crashes. Like sometimes when you use too much close mic on a splash or something, it kind of takes on a very different quality to the crashes, whereas there you really get the sense of the splash as a small crash, you know what I mean? I mean, technically it is just like a small diameter crash rather than it having this close mic character to it when it gets hit, which is more like an effect popping out. So that's pretty cool. Let's check out Nico Bordouche. This is interesting because this in some ways is one of the more raw sounding ones, but at the same time I can hear that he's got some samples going on. So there's like a ringy snare sample. In general, I feel like this mix feels quite bunched in the mid-range, a little bit, and this sounds harsh, but a little bit like a headphone effect on a mix kind of thing. Like it's not got the kind of brilliance or low end. But yeah, let's keep listening. Oh yeah, okay, so I can hear that the snare sample is triggering unevenly here, so you can hear some hits, just you can hear the sample coming in, and other ones it's gone. It sounds a lot more kind of wiry, snare wiry. And then, like, for example, the hit straight after the fill, that sample seems very strong. So, you know, the fill sounds very wiry, and then the hit immediately afterwards is like a completely different snare sound. So I'd just say, you know, nothing against samples at all, but definitely make sure that you integrate them well by having them work with the natural snare if you're keeping it, and make sure that it's triggering correctly so you don't have this kind of uneven sounding hit, because typically when you use samples it's to try and get more consistency, but here we're actually getting less consistency because the sample isn't triggering evenly on every hit. To say something positive about this mix, I think the cymbals are sounding really good. In terms of balance, they're good. Like I can really clearly hear all of the cymbals. They sound nice and consistent. Let's see the ride. Nice clang on the ride there. That's really cool. Let's check out that fill. The toms are interesting. I feel like there's some gating going on the toms here that's actually eliminating the softer floor tom hits. Yeah, so the softer floor tom hits are getting gated out here. I can hear them in the overheads and room mics, but that's just like a kind of papery attack. And I can even just see on the waveforms that the toms have got a very quick kind of decay, like an unnatural gated kind of thing. I would definitely advise stripping the silence out on the tom tracks, so actually deleting the space between the hits and adding a manual fade onto each one so that you can refine that. So you can have it be that if there's a particularly problematic hit, you can fade out quickly and avoid the bleed. But if there's a section like this where the drummer's playing consistently kind of 16ths most of the time on the floor tom, you can just leave that channel open and not have it kind of gate out the softer hits or have an odd envelope, which can then also make the bleed stand out more. So yeah, I'd go for manual bleed reduction on toms for sure. So actually, I'd say there's a lot of really good things about all of these mixes. The kick drums across the board sound really good. I think a common shortcoming is in the room mics, people either washing out their cymbals a bit too much and making things sound a bit distant, or they're kind of leaving too much low end in them and it's kind of swamping the mix without bringing much energy despite the level of the room mic. So that's almost like something you need to do quite differently between a really big room and a smaller room that might have a lot snappier room mics, and you might be looking to reduce the presence on the room mics or boost some extra body into them. But yeah, no, I feel like people in general have done a really good job with the mixes, not just these ones. Once more, thank you very much to everyone that participated, sent in their mix. Thanks to everyone that got hold of the course. I really hope it continues to be useful, not just in the mixing front, but in like the philosophy of tracking and setting up a kit and all of the other things that we talked about. So this has been a pleasure. Thank you very much, guys. And I guess I'll see you next time.
And now I'm back again. I'm sorry. So I hope that was fun to watch. The whole review video, I think, is 45 minutes long. So you were watching a little best of, showing you the coolest moments of Nolly's review, and I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you want to learn more about recording drums and mixing drums, check out the NOLLY Drum Experience. I think it's one of the best courses, if not the best course out there. I was so happy to have Nolly inside the academy, not only because he's a great producer, but also because he is actually able to explain things. He's a good teacher. So check out the link below. That's all I wanted to say. I know one more thing, just to make you a little more nervous. We're going to end the introduction prize. We're going to raise the price of the course, I think, in 10 days. Link below. So if you ever thought about getting that course, you better do it now. By the way, I forgot to say, if you join Kohle Audio Kult, if you become a member of the cult, you will get all our courses, including the Nolly course, from day one. And that's a lot of courses, a lot of multi-tracks, free plugins, free IRs, free samples, and you become a part of a really cool community. And like I said, you can get mix reviews. Enough advertising. I hope to see you inside the cult. I hope to see you in any of the next videos on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thanks again to Nolly. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye. Bye.